What I want to do is kind of lay out about 10 points of interface between science and Christian spirituality. I want to begin, of course, by confessing that I'm not a scientist. However, I love to hang out with scientists, and I love to read what scientists have to say, and I love very much co-teaching and dialoguing with scientists, and I've had the privilege of being able to do quite a bit of that over the years. So the first point I want to make has to do with the dignity of the scientist's vocation, the nobility of it. I think that when we hear about science, there are many responses to it, and of course there's all kinds of science. There's practical science, there's technological science, there's engineering, which is certainly a branch of science. There's theoretical science, and of course there's many kinds of sciences. So this is obviously a broad topic tonight, but I just want to begin by acknowledging the nobility of the pursuit of truth about nature, about creation, about human nature, about the universe, the cosmos, about the microcosm, about atoms and their parts, if you will, their relationships, and the macrocosm. That to study science, to study nature scientifically, is a discipline just as much, I think, as being a monk is a discipline. By that I mean, we might even say that science is the yoga of the West, because the amount of focus, concentration, years of preparation, effort that one puts into learning one's science is, if one brings one's heart along too, is in fact a spiritual discipline. And it can make one a very profound and spiritual person. But one does have to bring one's heart into it, because one can get away, at least it used to be this way in science, with just using your head. But of course that's very dangerous. There's a Hopi saying that says that only a fool thinks with his head. Only a fool thinks with his head. That a full human being thinks with head and heart, and that's, of course, what we've talked about earlier as wisdom, not just knowledge. But it's a dangerous thing then to think just with one's head. It leads to folly. And I think that this is one thing that's happening in science today, is that a lot of scientists are being struck again by awe, wonder, and beauty. And in doing so, their heart, that is their mystical, what might be called their mystical brain, is being awakened as well. So there's a lot happening at this level in science today. In speaking of the dignity of scientist's vocation, I love that line from Hildegard of Bingen in the 12th century when she said, all science comes from God. All science comes from God. That this war that we get in fundamentalism between science and religion is an unnecessary dualism. And it is part of the dualistic tradition that puts down matter and says that spirit is not part of matter. Once you have that starting point, then you set up for a war between science and religion. Now, at the same time, I want to say that science is not always right. Science evolves like everything else. After all, part of what we'll be talking about today is that the whole mechanistic scientific teaching that really led us around for 200 years in the West. And the fact is, it was inaccurate. So what I love about science is that it is a pursuit of truth, but it's not ever totally there. It's always in evolution, as anything human is. But nevertheless, it's definitely one of the authentic sources of wisdom. It can be, and we'll get more deeply into that, I hope, as we move along here. So that's the first point I want to make, is simply the recognition of the dignity of the scientist's vocation. And a quote that I use several times in this book, Natural Grace, from Aquinas, that I don't think can be quoted too often: a mistake about creation results in a mistake about God. I mean, that's how important the scientist's work is, that the unveiling of nature's mysteries, the finding of nature's truths, has everything to do with the revelation of the divine. And to the extent that we've mistaken about nature, we are mistaken about God, spirit, or whatever we want to call that power behind nature. So I think that in that one line, Aquinas himself is truly laying out the nobility of the vocation of the scientist. In the pursuit of knowing the truth about creation, we are knowing more about divinity itself. And then that other line from Aquinas that's also applicable so much, when he says that revelation comes in two volumes, nature and the Bible. Therefore, he's putting nature and those who study nature, which is scientists, at the same plane as those who study the Bible in terms, again, of revelation itself. Now, the West has never believed this. If we believe this, every seminary of every denomination, Jewish, Protestant, Catholic, and so forth, would have scientists on their faculties. As many scientists as they have biblical scholars. Frankly, the only school I know that does that is the school that I started 30 years ago. That we have cosmology and cosmologists and other scientists teaching along with theologians, because we take that line from Aquinas seriously. That nature itself is revelation. And by nature, I include human nature. So the arts and sciences of psychology, if you will, are also revelatory of the divine for that very reason.